bravefathers.com. Welcome to the Brave Fathers Show. And now, the prophecy.
Was Michael Jackson's father a monster? Was he the horrible person that some say he was? And to my understanding, Michael Jackson himself has said a few things about his father. But was he really a monster? My name is John Paul from bravefathers.com. And today we are going to look at fatherhood. This is the Brave Fathers Show. So fatherhood is central to this. Thank you for watching. And Michael Jackson's father obviously has come to some attention. May his soul rest in perfect peace because of the movie about his son. May his soul also rest in peace and power. So let's talk about that. But before we get to that, I want to say something that happened to me. It's a story that I've been debating about whether or not I should share, and actually told some of my family members about this. I'm not going to go into all the details about what happened, but it's very important. So, long story short, a father attacked me, and his comments the comments he made to me were based on my skin color, my appearance, essentially, letting me know I need to go back to my country, wherever he believes my country is. And it didn't end up, in a physical altercation. There was some words exchanged. And when he attacked me, he did threaten violence. But I thought, there was no reason for me to fight him, even though he was instigating it. He was trying to put his fingers in my face. And I do understand that under such a threat, it might be justified to preemptively defend yourself. But I judged that specific situation and decided that it's best to walk away. I actually tried to defuse the situation. But what's interesting is that this man did this in front of his child, who was about 3 or 4 years old. 5 max, but I think he was about 4 years old. And you could see the son's face light up with pride when he saw his father telling me that he's going to essentially beat me up right there. And he had no good reason to start the altercation. You could tell he's been going to the gym a bit, so I'm assuming he thought, well, let's try out some of my newfound body and find somebody to fight with. I was very surprised because, I'm not the smallest guy in the place, but it was interesting because there's other people who were all white. And he actually apologized to them for the commotion, but I thought it was right to do this with me. And I think in his mind, wherever he was from, because I've never seen him in the area, he thought everybody would think like him because, hey, we're all white here. And now listen, I have no, just to be clear, allegiance to any movement because, but other than Brave Fathers, so I'm not making this about race or anything of that sort, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to talk about it. It's just what he said, right? And how he seemed to be thinking. That's why I'm bringing it up. Whatever he said is his problem. It's not my problem. Those are his thoughts, his ideas. And unfortunately, he's showing those things to his son, which is the main reason why I'm telling this story. So I said to someone recently that this male essentially guaranteed a jail sentence for his son. He has guaranteed that his son will be arrested and will go to jail. Why? Because the father was trying to start a fight. The little child, not understanding what it means, was pleased by that because maybe he's seen his father raise some heavy stuff and thinks, oh, his father is strong, right? So in his judgment, he thought it was a good idea to threaten a fight. But I think he really misjudged the situation. I tried to make peace with him. I said, listen, we're all stressed. Perhaps you didn't mean what you said. And your child is watching, right? Because I'm very mindful of the Brave Fathers movement. We are the key to the future. These children need us. So I said to myself, you know what? Not for the sake of the man, but for the child, for the child who does not know what's going on. Let me see if I can diffuse this. I said, listen, I'm ready to shake hands. Let's forget it. Let's say you were stressed out and you just said what you said, because your son is watching you. And he refused. He was like, no, get off me. So forth, right? So because I came closer to him, I said, look, let's just shake hands. He was like, no. Right. So he decided to leave it at that, at an adversarial level. So the child sees this and the child is impressed by this. It's possible he's going to brag to most likely a female who does not respect him and to his mates who probably don't respect him either about how he handled somebody of my complexion and let me know where I belong. And he might say to his son, like, I showed him, didn't I? Yes, Daddy, you did. Yeah, show his muscles and all that. But what he does not understand is he has implanted in the child's mind that you can walk out to people with no consequence. Because that's the assumption. You can walk up to people, threaten them, shout abusive slurs, say abusive things to that person, and walk away. You may even make violent gestures towards people and walk away with nothing happening to you. Right? Because the child thinks that the parent is always right at a certain age. So it will make sense for this child to go on, to go to kindergarten, to go to nursery, to go to school, and start doing this to people and possibly be successful with it, because most people don't want a fight. Most people, especially these days, stand back from an altercation. So he may become a bully, because that works until it doesn't. So that's one father. And we are talking today about Michael Jackson, or Michael Jackson's father, who I don't know much about, frankly. I've just read the Wikipedia entry, watched a few videos, and I watched the Michael movie, the new movie about Michael Jackson's life. It was a very good movie to watch, especially if you enjoy music, if you enjoy Michael Jackson's music. I'm a fan of Michael's work, not so much his music in the sense that I don't listen to it as much as some of my other family members, but he is an inspiration. He's a brilliant songwriter. I learned a lot from watching that movie. But the central story of that movie is his relationship, Michael Jackson's relationship to his father, Joseph Jackson. And a lot of people say he was a monster. There is a divide on that as well. But they showed a couple of scenes where, for example, Michael Jackson's father hit his son with a belt. And if you grew up in a certain era, you know that that's nothing really. I know today they make a big deal. I'm not saying it's right to do that. I'm not saying you should or should not use a belt on your children. Of course, stay within the law. Don't abuse your children, of course. I'm not saying abuse your children. But I have to be honest and say that I cannot tell you what to do based on the laws of where you live. But the reason why I say it's nothing is that I don't agree with the reasons or with him beating the son, of course, in that scene. I am aware that there are children who, for example, get violent with other children. So perhaps they might be missing a bit of discipline. I don't know. There are certain situations where I've seen online where I cannot make a negative judgment about the father. But the focus seemed to be on the fact that he hit him, right? And I know many mothers who hit way harder. I've seen and witnessed all kinds of mothers discipline their children way harder than what we saw in the movie. I don't know how close that was to reality, but I've seen a lot of women do way worse, and women do that all the time, right? Of course, that's not politically correct. That is not the official narrative. We know this. But women beat their children a lot. And they beat them with objects, and we've had all kinds of stories that you can't hide them all, especially if the child ends up injured fatally, right? Which has happened way too many times. But the focus of the story was the pressure and the demand that Joseph Jackson had on Michael Jackson. And it was shown in a very negative light. And before watching the movie, I did not even know that this man was managing the Jackson 5 and Michael Jackson for such a long period of time. I thought that he had only, pressured them to become good at music. I did not even know that he spent a lot of time, energy, and effort to make sure their careers took off. If you're familiar with Alan Roger Carey, with whom I've had a couple of interviews, unfortunately, I've lost those tapes. One of them, I messed up the audio so bad. If you watch my Locario interview, I have a tendency to do that sometimes. But this time I destroyed, by mistake, Alan's side of the audio. I turned up the volume so much, the gain, that it was so distorted you can't make out what he's saying. And it really hurt me because, rest in peace, he's passed away. And so I'll never have the opportunity again. But I have had a chance to have a couple of conversations with Alan Roger Carey, right? I've read all his books as well. And he's really worth reading. You can also get his books on Audible, and it might help because he was a father before he passed away. I believe he was in his 60s or his late 50s, I'm not certain, but he had a child very late in life and died a couple of years ago. So his son at the time was probably 2 or 3 years old when he died. So when you buy stuff from Alan Roger Carey, you're helping support his family. So his stuff is really good. One of his best books is The Possibility of Sex, which I think every man should read it, because I think a lot of us get into these situations in family court being duped by the attraction that we feel towards females. And that book teaches you a lot about that. But the reason why I mention Alan Roger Carey is that he is also from Gary, Indiana. So he's from the same town as Michael Jackson. And if I'm not mistaken, he was living in that city, in the town, at the same time as Michael Jackson was. So Alan Roger Carey lived in Gary, Indiana at the same time as Michael Jackson was. So if I remember correctly, he has stated how difficult things were from that town. Not many people have made it out of that town to become very successful. Now, Alan has been on Oprah Winfrey. He's been featured on many TV shows. I highly recommend you check out his stuff. And Alan told me, he did say, look, it was a tough town, right? So a lot of the things he learned, especially about dating a woman, was because he was in a rough environment. So you had to kind of be more assertive to put your point across because it was the environment. Now, to the best of my understanding, Joseph Jackson was also a factory worker, right? So he worked, I believe, at least 2 shifts, sometimes straight. You know, if you've been around people who work in factories, or if you have worked in a factory, or if you work in a factory, you know how difficult that work is, how painful it is, how dehumanizing it can feel, and you know that it drains you. So here is the thing. We have Joseph Jackson, we have his children, right? His wife that he's feeding. And we have a town that is rough, that is difficult, lots of criminal activity, lots of gang activity, people shooting each other and so forth. And he has to work, long hours in a environment that most of us today couldn't handle. And yet he was able to find the time and energy and focus and willingness to create the talent or to help shape the talent of his children as a father on the level of Jackson 5 and, of course, Michael Jackson, the undisputed king of pop. Undisputed king of pop. Think about it for a moment. You go to a factory, right? Carrying heavy stuff, moving things, cutting things, putting things in places, monotonous, repetitive. Probably somebody not being respectful to you. It's hot, you're tired, and you're still broke, right? Like you have some money, you can eat, but you're basically living to work. Every minute of your life ends up being, let me just set up my hourglass so you can watch the time go by. So every moment of your being is spent working to feed what? How many children? Like you have the Jackson 5, you have, I believe, Latoya Jackson, Janet Jackson. I don't know how many children there were at the time, at least 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know he had about 11 kids. I don't know how many there were at the time. So I was feeding so many mouths, right? So that's what Joseph Jackson was doing. And you still found time to teach these children music and have so much energy left in you to bring them to the world-class level where they dominated the charts for many, many years. And Michael Jackson is reigning till today, even though he is no longer with us on the planet, his physical presence. And so I was very disappointed as a father that the movie did not emphasize any of that fact. I think there has to be a series on that. Let me write that down. A series. Because this also shows how we are being portrayed as fathers in the society. And I'll come to that in a moment, because this is very important. So this father is working, right? We're all working to feed our children. We live in conditions that I'm sure most of us would like some more comfort, some more luxury, some more, just freedom. Like I'm sure most of us would like that. And he still had that effort made, right? So he managed these kids as well. So he was managing them against people who had decades of industry experience. Remember, we're talking of the times of Bruce Springsteen. We had the Beatles still playing music, right? We had Paul McCartney. I think that was the times of Paula Abdul. Who else was on those times? I don't know. I need to think. Wow. Of course, Prince. Prince, of course. And other world-class musicians, many of them still celebrated today, many of them still performing today. And Joseph Jackson was able to have his children succeed. Now, I'm not taking away anything from the talent of the children. That's important. But we all know talent without work is nothing. Without the songs, without knowing what you're doing, without the preparation, it's nothing, right? And those days, it's not like now that you can just, do some stupid video on TikTok and go viral and get famous that way. You have to actually perform live in front of people. If they are not dancing, you don't get a call back. You don't get a call back. And it's not easy. How many musicians today living in Los Angeles, living in London, living in New York, living in Ontario, Toronto, in Johannesburg, in Sydney, in big cities where there are all resources available to them, are still complaining that they can't make it. And this guy got his family out of Gary, Indiana, onto the worldwide stage. I think as a father, that's something that is very respectable. But now imagine for a moment, two things. So let's start with one. Let's say he had a wife who was similar to some of the females we have had to deal with, right? Because the movie showed some opposition from her to him, which I think was also hypocritical, and we'll come back to that. But so we'll come back to that. But there was some opposition, but not much, right? But there was some, and towards the end there is more. But let's say she was like one of these mothers that we have seen, right? I'm not saying our children's mothers, but some mothers that we've seen around these days, in the modern days. So let's imagine that's what he was married to, Joseph Jackson. How would he be able to create Jackson 5? Because he would say, look, we need to rehearse. She would say no. Well, which she did say in the movie, but he had enough authority to be able to say no, they are going to rehearse, right? And you can't argue that he wasted time because we've seen the results. But these days, would that be possible? How many of us have ambitions for our children, right? We want the best for our children, want to give them the best. But through the family courts, we are created to look like monsters, and rather the lenient attitude towards raising children is what's being promoted. So you want to teach your child something, to show them some kind of discipline, or just to be present for them to learn from you. And the family courts are stopping you. Who knows what genius is in your child? And I'm sure you do. I'm sure you see positive qualities in your child, right? You're a brave father. And then the system stops you from fulfilling your child's potential. So imagine Joseph Jackson living in that environment where the mother stops him from helping his children bring out their potential. And I'm not condoning, if he did any abuse or if he did something wrong, I'm not condoning that. But what I'm saying is we can also look at the positive things he did, because so much of the world has benefited from him. No matter what you say, Michael Jackson wouldn't be where he is without his father. I've heard somebody say, oh, he was a genius, so he would. No. Because he was practicing from an early age. So at some point, if you don't practice, you will not get the results, or not at that level. And I'm not taking away anything from Michael's talent and hard work. But he did learn that work ethic from his father. Let's be honest. Let's just be honest. Some of us wish we had a little bit more discipline in the direction that would allow us to, reach some of our potential, right? That we had a bit more push towards achieving certain things, because at some point you realize that, wait a minute, if I had done this or that, the other, my life would have turned out differently. Like, I'm not saying we should be regretting or not be grateful for where we are, but I'm just saying, like, let's be real, right? I'm sure we wouldn't complain if we had the kind of wealth that Michael Jackson had, the kind of wealth that his father, Joseph Jackson, worked together to create. To manage a group, an artist, a single artist is difficult. To manage a whole group of artists, to bring them on the worldwide stage, as Joseph Jackson did, is very difficult. And if you are a father and you have ambition for your child, I'm sure you know the frustration of not just helping your child, but being opposed by the system that shows you to be a monster. That shows you to be a monster. And I'm seeing that that is actually a problem. So now let's imagine a second situation where Joseph Jackson was alive today. Let's say Michael Jackson, Jackson's 5 were alive today. I don't think they would get off the ground. I think, like so many children, the Jacksons would have missed out on a father. When I watched that movie, I realized that the system is destroying childhood. People are complaining about, oh, gas prices, this, things like, but we don't have production. And for the past 2 or 3 decades, we've really, the only thing I see that is getting produced more is things like pizza, burgers, and sugary things worldwide. Yes, we have some technology, but it's all sugary, like watching TikToks, right? When we dive deeper into topics like we're doing now, a lot of people don't want to have these conversations. People don't want to admit that fathers are not allowed to raise their children to bring the highest potential. I think most of the problems we have today is because of lack of fatherhood. So the same way they were portraying Joseph Jackson as a monster is the same way today fathers are portrayed as monsters in family courts. Fathers want the best for their children, and yes, sometimes you will have to raise your voice, like, let's just be honest. Hey, that's even the soft version, right? But it's no more allowed. It's called abuse now. But sometimes you have to get people's attention. You do have to get a child's attention. And I know by saying these things, I'm opening myself to all kinds of danger just by saying this. But I'm thinking, like, when are we going to start talking about the truth? Sometimes you have to tell your child that, listen, you're not going to play, you're going to do your homework, or you're crying. Okay, let's wait a minute for you to finish crying, but you will do your homework today. Right? And ideally, you don't even want to get to that stage. And they'll say, oh, you're wrong, right? They make school so dumb so that it doesn't show how the children are failing. But we know the children are failing. Not because they're not smart, not because they can't do it, but because the system does not allow fathers to step in and discipline these children. So Joseph Jackson, in today's age, they'll have said, no, you're working the kids too hard, it doesn't matter. And those children, the Jacksons, would not have had a chance to perform to the world, and the world would not have enjoyed the music that they brought to the world. It was today. And the reason why I said it was a bit hypocritical of the mother in the movie is that everybody was spending the money when it came, right? And that was the movie, so I'm not saying in real life that's what she did. But in the movie, it was very hypocritical, to be acting the way she did towards the father. And I'm not saying he was right in everything he did. He was wrong in many things he did, or the way he did them, right? My argument is no man is perfect. I grew up, when I was growing up, some of the neighborhoods we lived in, because we moved quite a few times, were not good. So when I saw the scene where Michael Jackson couldn't play outside, I could relate. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand. But now when I hear, oh, some of these kids are in jail, right? Which is similar to what Joseph Jackson has said about the kids in the neighborhood. Some died, some, in all kinds of trouble. Many addicted to all kinds of substances. And I remember seeing kids getting high as a child. I didn't know back then, like, how bad that is for a child to be getting high. Horrible. Even, I don't, it's not a show about drugs, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But so I didn't understand why we're not allowed to play with those kids or to go to certain, parts of the neighborhood. Why we had strict hours. And so, as much as I will also not agree with everything my parents did or everything my father did, I do understand now why they said don't play with those kids. So I can understand why Michael Jackson's father would say, don't go out to play. Play with your brothers. Play some instruments. And listen, if you've ever been hungry, not when I say hungry, you should know what I mean. Like hungry, not, oh, I want to eat something because I've not had lunch yet. Like you've forgotten what lunch is. If you've ever felt that, if you've ever been, around those environments, everybody has had a different background, but many of us lived in an era where there was hard times and our parents stuck together. It's not like today. Some got divorced, but you know what I mean. It was a different time. You understand that sometimes you're like, listen, I'm getting out of this neighborhood. I'm getting out of this situation. I'm doing everything I can so my children don't live in this pain that I'm living in. And it hurts. Every parent can tell. Like every parent knows there's sometimes a thing where a child is like, oh, daddy, can I have that? And you have to say no. And you can't tell the child is because you can't afford it, right? So it's not necessarily like a thing that the average person can afford, but you still feel it. Maybe if you were Michael Jackson's kid, maybe it was different for you because he had loads and loads and loads of money. I'm not talking about that. I remember Steve Harvey talking about when his kid went to Michael Jackson's house and asked for, what was it, what was roller coaster ride in the backyard, right? Most of us cannot get a roller coaster ride. So even at the level of Steve Harvey, he still had to, tell his kid, no, we can't have that. And it's not easy for a father to say to the child, listen, we don't have enough money to buy a roller coaster. If your child says, I want a Lamborghini, or if if they say, I want a Bugatti, and they say, can we get one, Dad? What do you say? Right? So that's maybe an extreme thing, but to a child's mind, a Lamborghini or a car that costs $1 million is like, yeah, but they don't have a concept of that. But to be more realistic, there may be a toy that is, let's say, $1,000, right? Like a really cool toy that they saw in a store display, in the toy store, on TV or on YouTube. And at the time, you don't have that $1,000. Or it may be $100 toy, and at that time, you cannot spend the extra $100 on that toy. We've all experienced something similar, right? So now imagine Joseph Jackson in a town where everybody's so broke, they will rob their next door neighbor for lunch. Not the whole town, but you get the idea. That there's people who would do that. People who would steal your stuff just walking down the street. And if your children are not guaranteed some kind of safety, they'll end up, best case scenario, working in a steel factory like you. And you don't want to work in a steel factory. You do it because you love your children, you love your wife. But you don't want your children to work in a steel factory like you do, right? You don't want them to go through that hard labor. So, of course, it takes a lot of effort. People don't understand what it takes to escape certain circumstances. So to me, when they paid this man, Joseph Jackson, as a monster, and by the way, leave your comments. I'm very curious about what you think, if you agree or disagree. If you've seen the movie Michael, what you think. And of course, if you have a family court case, especially if you're in the UK facing false allegations, click on the link in the description below. Go to bravefathers.com right now. Get in touch and we'll sort you out. But back to the topic. So a lot of people underestimate what it takes to escape gravity. I'll give you an example. One of my struggles has been, especially since I started going to court, is consuming a lot of sugar. Right? I really cut down on alcohol. I think I may have a beer later today or during the week or something. I haven't had a drink in months, right? Because I've been dealing with a lot of work and I need to be on top condition. But I'm thinking it might be good. I like my beer, I like my whiskey, and my woman. But because of eating too much sugar and drinking more than usual, I put on more weight in my belly than before, way more. Right? So if your kids start noticing and they think it's funny because it's squishy and jiggly, right? Well, then it's happening. Now, listen, everybody is different. I I never had drunk so much and consumed so much sugar as I did after the whole thing started, right? So, so that's not the physique I'm used to. But to lose it is a lot of work, right? Anybody who, some people like that physique. And I have friends, in fact, I think I've spoken about my mentor. He was chubby, he had a belly, the biggest womanizer I've ever known. So I know you don't need a six-pack to get women, but that's another story. But for those of us who'd like to have, lose some weight, it's difficult. Even to stop drinking when you're in certain circumstances is difficult, right? All these things are difficult. So it's also difficult to build a future for your children where, let's say, you want them to have more money, more material wealth, a higher net worth than your last 5 generations have had, right? So let's say you make, it doesn't matter, but let's say, for example, let's say your family makes usually, the highest earner in your family makes, let's say, 270,000 a year, for example, right? And the average person makes 20, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60, 70,000 a year, right? Whatever. It's not about the amount. But you realize that even though you're not going hungry, you're always struggling to have the actual life you really want because you're working more hours, spending more time on your work than you would like to. Like I have clients, and again, it's not about the amount of money. I've had clients from all kinds of earnings, right? But you see fathers even sometimes, have saved their whole lives because they make, let's say, about 40,000 a year. And the family court wipes out all their savings on the family court. And this is money when you say to yourself, wait a minute, if I even bought Bitcoin with that fucking money, and I'm not endorsing Bitcoin, but I'm just giving an example, I would be better off, right? If this child's mother said, listen to me, said, listen, we are better off, you shut the fuck up, let me spend time with my kid, I'll take this 30,000, this 100,000, whatever we're gonna spend on lawyers, let's invest that. Let's invest that money, and 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we split that. Rationally, that would be better, right? But no, the system is saying, let's lose all this in the environment that we live in today, in the financial conditions that we live today, in the economy that we live today. Let's waste money on the courts. Let's give a share to this female who's just gonna spend it on things other than the child, because that's what usually happens in reality. And not allow this father to take care of his child. So there's no way to create the kind of stuff that we are aware of now that we might not be aware of before, that our parents didn't know. Because remember, our parents did not have the internet. So many people didn't know that you could actually start a business and make more money the way we do now. They didn't know a lot of the information that we have right now. So most of us are aware that, look, there is investment opportunities that even if you put a little bit, it's better than you put nothing. For example, I'm just talking about money here, right? We know there are things we can do for our children that will improve their lives, but the system will not allow it. So how do we escape? How do we create a future where our children, our sons and our daughters, can get the best potential? Because I'm sure you look at your child and you can see the good thing your child has. And I'm sure, and I see it all the time when I go out, especially at the supermarket, if I see a family where the mother seems to be dominant, you can tell the kids are out of line and the father wants to discipline them, but he's afraid because he's in public. If she says he's abusive, his contact with children will be cut. He will not get to see his children. He will not get to see his children. So this just shows you This just shows you that, in essence, fathers are just being pushed to the side. Because just like in the Michael Jackson movie, it was made to look like the mother was the good one. And I'm not saying she was the bad one. I'm not saying she was bad. But it didn't show that to manage an artist, especially at the level of Michael Jackson, where everybody wants a piece, you have to spend hours studying contracts. Yes, you have your lawyers, but you still have to know what you're signing. You have to get gigs, because the father was still driving them to the gigs himself. So whatever rigor they were going through, Joseph Jackson was going through with them. Look, if you've worked in manual work, right, or you work in a factory, or anything that demands lots of hours, you know how tired you are after. So this man did not say, oh, I'm just going to take a nap. No, he was up with those kids. He was also with them. He was rehearsing with them. Right? He was studying with them the music, teaching them concepts, ideas, how to play an instrument. Like, I'm learning my instruments. I'm nowhere close where I wish I was. Nowhere near, nowhere. And I will admit, I don't have, well, I shouldn't say that. Well, because maybe I'll find it in myself. I have to find it in myself, the Joseph Jackson level of discipline. I probably have it in me. We all do. So the way I see it is, we need to be able to raise ourselves first. That's the conclusion I've come to. That we need to find in ourselves a way, as fathers, to raise ourselves. Excuse me. And you'll be surprised how much even 1 hour a day makes a difference. Like fathers who are in family courts. If you spend like 1 hour a day on your case every day, no matter how painful it feels, because it's painful, and I'm here to admit it's difficult, and I've not always adhered with it. But the results I got, especially when I won my appeal case to get the shared live with order, I spent more than 1 hour a day. I spent a lot of time. There were some days I didn't put in as much effort, but I was there every day with nobody around. I showed up, sat at my desk with the papers, and just did my best. And I'm not gonna pretend. After going through all the court process, right? The years, time, money, effort that I spent in court, I said, Jesus Christ, if I spend this time and money on building something, and the energy on building something for myself and the children, I would be in a different position in life, right? So the reason why I mentioned like the amounts, let's say you're making whatever you're making, but when you think about it, the kind of energy, the emotional drain, the pain, the rejection, the dejection, the ostracization you feel as a father when you go to family court, you say to yourself, if I put that energy into myself, into something I care about, into my dream, or whether it's exercise, whether building a business, learning a skill, whatever it is, or even investing the money, within those years, because many of us spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years in court, I could have made millions from that. And if you're already making millions, you could have made tens of millions and so forth. Think about how difficult it is to win in family court, what it takes to do it. I remember this father that I met, and he had like 3 jobs, I think, to keep up with everything. Hardly had any time for himself. And he got to see his kids 1 hour every 2 weeks, supervising a contact center. He had to spend hundreds and hundreds every time to see them, because if he didn't come with lots of things, I'm suspecting the mother was selling them. Next time she wouldn't bring the kids. So she had to bring bags of shopping. That's how dedicated he was to seeing his kids. And he told me I'd been doing that for 2 or 3 years, because when I started my thing, we're in the same contact center. And because he was also driving a cab, so I needed a cab. So immediately, like our sessions finished around the same time. So I saw he was walking towards the cab. That was his cab. So he took me, and he was so gracious. He didn't even want to take money from me. He just wanted the conversation, because that's how lonely he was. Because he saw me from the contact center, he's like, no, 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 because he knew that I was going through the same thing as he was, but mine wasn't as hard as his. I'm not even going to pretend. But imagine if this man put that same effort and time, if he was allowed to buy the system, into building something for the children. Imagine the kind of role model he would be with his work ethic, because all the kids saw was the things showing up. They didn't see the work that went into it, right? And many of us go through the same thing. Many of us go through the same thing as fathers. So when people say Joseph Jackson was abusive and a monster, you know what? Maybe he was, and I do not condone that. I do not accept that as the right way to live. At the same time, I'm not going to ignore the fact that this father gave his children, his children's children, his children's children's children, and so forth, security, safety, that is even difficult to squander. Because Jaffa Jackson is Michael Jackson's nephew, if I'm not mistaken. So that's his grandchild, who is set for life just from this movie, if he's smart. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a sequel in the works, right? There's so many opportunities open, available to them because of Joseph Jackson. And I will say, most likely, the support of Catherine Jackson, his wife. So I'm not discounting the mother's work, right? But it was his vision. It was his vision. So the mother, in essence, was the helper, as is right. And I know you have a vision. You have a vision. You also do. And I do. And it's very painful when this system stands in our way. And the painful thing is, you start earning more, they're always ready to grab, right? It's so insane to me. Like, when I think about this, it's like almost as if they don't want the world to be a better place. As if they want people to struggle. But again, I'm saying, little by little, we have to start raising ourselves. We have to stop accepting all the negative labels. You have to stop being afraid of being fathers. Right? I understand there are laws, I understand there are bounds, and there's a modern society. But we have to start pushing in a different direction. We must. Otherwise, our children don't have a stand. They don't have a chance. I know for myself, I have to find that discipline, because, again, I have to find that Joseph Jackson level of discipline, not even on the children, on myself, and towards the work I'm doing. Right? Because these days, I understand, you get tired, you want to wind down, Xbox, PlayStation, scrolling on the phone, right? Amongst other entertainment forms. Right? They didn't even have that then. So alcohol probably was the best escape for many people. So I understand the need to distract ourselves. But the problem is, the harsh reality is, if we don't find a way, we can't teach our children another way. With the little time that we have with our kids, we won't be able to give them what we really have if we don't lift ourselves up. And every man has to do it for himself. And of course, through these shows, through this movement, through the Brave Fathers movement, we teach each other, we learn from each other, and we push each other forward. By the way, please like and subscribe if you like this, right? Because I'm trying to get this thing off the ground. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. And I know this is a difficult conversation. I know this is not a topic that is easy, right? Because we also have to look at ourselves. We can't just say, oh, we're perfect. I'm perfect. No, we all have things to learn. But we all want to get to a level where we have influence, some kind of influence on our children. That influence comes from what you do when the children are not around. So there was a period of time when I was completely cut off from the kids, and I realized that even though they are not here, they're still watching somehow, because what I'm doing is going to reflect. So I had to be building everything with the children in mind. I had to look at myself in a way where I had to be very honest with myself about a lot of things. And listen, some of the things literally contorted my body when I thought of them, when I was facing myself, and I still do. Because you face yourself and you realize some things about yourself that are not right, that you need to change to be a stronger man and more powerful man. But you have to change them first, right? So, like I've admitted, sugar has been a problem for me. Like it really has. I like sweet things. Like imagine eating your kids' cookies, right? Of course, you can buy another set of cookies, but that's my problem. Like, look, like I eat the cookies and early morning get more cookies, so they don't know that I've eaten all the cookies. Like that's bad. I know I'm paying for them, but I bought the kids for I didn't buy the cookies for me. Do you know what I mean? It's bad. Like sugar is my problem. I'm not even gonna pretend. And it still is very painful facing myself to see that, look, I need to sort that out, because I can't allow my health to be affected, because then I can't even be an effective father. And all of us have something that's affecting us that we have to overcome so that we are better fathers. It's not only what we do when our children are not around. And for many of us, a day will come where we get to see our kids, those of us who can't. And you want to be able for your kids to feel proud of you. And you want to be proud of yourself because you know you've done your best. So my point here is, even if you don't have access or enough access, you still must proceed. You still have to move forward. And when the darkness comes, you face the darkness. I've had some of the darkest thoughts you could think of. I've had some of the darkest thoughts you could think of, really dark. And I'm sure you can relate. Dark, scary things, because this process takes you there. The family court process takes you there, right? If you've ever had your kids estranged from you, right? Or when the last time you saw your kids, they were different height. Like that's painful when you miss moments, right? Many of us have missed precious moments of the children's lives, right? First words, first steps. It's painful. It's painful. I was reading an update on the family laws, and now they are going to put more pressure on not separating siblings, for kids to spend more siblings. I'm not certain if they're only relating that to adoptions or care placements, where the children are placed in care. But if they are bringing that also to regular proceedings, when a mother has children with another man, they seem to be, if I hope it's not going there, but if it's going there, that means they'll be more concerned with the children spending time with their siblings than with their father. So what you need to understand is the whole system at the same time is still an illusion, right? a very difficult illusion to see through, but it is still an illusion. I know you work hard and I know you are doing your best. We are all here doing our best, right? We could all be doing something else, but we are here talking about this important topic. So I want to challenge you, and I want you to challenge yourself, and I'm challenging myself too. This is a challenge to all of us. Let's turn it up one notch, just one notch, right? Let's look at our lives, what we want. And despite all the negative influences, all the bad things try to stop us from being the men and the fathers that we truly are, let's just step it up a bit still, right? Let's remove the explanations a little bit. Wherever there's an excuse, let's cut that down a little bit. And let's find a way to progress. And the progress may take time to see, right? It may take 1 year, 2 years, 10 years. Like I have projects that may take me, perhaps the whole of my lifetime. But let's do that. Let's be not the fathers that the society says, oh, you're a great father, you're paying child support, you have a good job, you wear nice clothes, you have a nice car, you have a nice house, pay the mortgage, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you're doing your job. No. No, 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 no. Let's find some pride and say, no, 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 no. I'm going to be above average, even if it's just one notch in whatever it is I'm doing. If I'm running a business, I'll improve that business. If I'm working in a factory, I'll be faster in that factory. If I'm sweeping floors, they'll shine just that much more. Whatever it is that we're doing, as brave fathers, let us step it up a little bit. Let's not allow the system to bring us down. Because you could argue that Joseph Jackson's circumstances were harder than what most of us are facing, right? Granted, he had a woman who was not taking him to family court, as far as we know. But he had 2 jobs, as far as I know. And even one job in a steel factory is a lot. It's a lot. Living in a dangerous environment, and definitely he wasn't raised in Beverly Hills. Right? And they did it. We don't have to be Michael Jacksons, or our children don't have to be kings of pop. We don't even have to get super rich or anything like that. No, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just saying, let's find a standard that is above average. Because I think that's where we find our power. I think that's where we can surprise our opponents in all areas of life, where they realize we are more difficult of an opponent than they thought. So we can start winning more. I'm thinking that's what we should do, right? So I'll have to figure out my sugar thing and figure out my exercise thing to burn off some of the stuff. So that's one of my challenges, right? Of course, I have to make this show a great one for you, so you enjoy it, so that you're here next week. I'll have another, within 24 hours, I'll have another live. So I hope to see you here. I hope you find me on X. So just search Brave Fathers. On YouTube, it's Brave Fathers as well. I'm starting up a little bit on TikTok, a little bit. So on TikTok, it's Brave Fathers Home. Brave Fathers Home. Yes, and I want you to be part of this. I want you to tell me your story. You can reach me through bravefathers.com. So you can click on the link below to join me. Please like the video. Please comment, share what you think. Subscribe for more. And really, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for choosing to be here. So we talk about Joseph Jackson, Michael Jackson's father. We talk about our children. We talk about being fathers. We talk about being men, getting more out of life. Thank you for doing this with me, because this is the beginning of something that the world has never seen, and none of us really knows what it is, but we all know we'll be here and we will do it. So I know that wherever you are, if you just put a bit more energy towards yourself, right? Focus a little bit more on you. Don't sacrifice everything for the children, for the mother, for the system. Because if you give everything, you have nothing, and that weakens you. And I know it sounds paradoxical because we think the more we give, the better. No, the more you give to yourself, by nature, you will give more to the people you care about. It's just natural, right? The stronger you become, the more you can protect. The richer you become, the more you can provide. The more you like yourself, the more your company will be enjoyable to the people who are around you. The happier you'll be. And the happier you are, the happier you can share your happiness. It's not just about giving to others like the system wants you to think. That's bullshit. That's a lie. And that's how men become weak. And that's how the system can take advantage of our families that we try so hard to protect. So, God willing, I'll be live again within the next 24 hours. I hope to see you again. So watch out the space, subscribe so you get notified. It really means a lot. Leave your comments. Whatever you think, you agree or disagree, let me know. So I'm gonna end this for today, for now. This is John Paul from bravefathers.com. And remember, when in doubt, you are the truth. See you again soon.
BraveFathers.com.